All right. So Joe and Matt Walsh had a pretty solid conversation yesterday with some disagreement, some agreement, and overall, I think it was just a good example of an honest conversation where people aren't going after gotchas and they don't necessarily agree on everything, but they agree on some stuff. And yeah, I mean, maturity. So you guys watched
Yeah.
it too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Maturity. Yeah. It was a 3-hour conversation. And, obviously there are things they agree on, and there's things that they disagree on, but, it was really good, approach by both parties to have the civil discourse and agree to disagree. But they can still promote one another and, agree on other things and still be friends, like that's at the end of the day, I think what we're all trying to achieve.
I would be interested, like, what percentage of the trans community are more heterodox, like, Blair, or even like ContraPoints. I don't think ContraPoints is like necessarily like she's probably more in the middle, but it'd be really interesting to see what percentage actually like buy into the full ideology versus not.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. And it's interesting too. Like California has a really big trans community, and you know, a couple years back, I actually did a panel on trans issues and what we had Blair there, we had Angel Bonilla, a couple other people, and just kind of talking about that perception. And there really is a weird shunning, though, of people like Blair, the people that they view as quote unquote conservative. It's kind of sad, unfortunately. And I don't know, like I've always made the argument that someone like Blair is exactly what you need on the conservative side to kind of understand the nuances of being trans. But also think that there's fair criticisms of when that line is pushed too far, and I think that's what Blair does a really good job on. So and some of the other headlines we saw with Matt Walsh on this is that he's anti-trans. I don't think Matt Walsh is anti-trans. I just think he has a different view on it than,
Yeah, I mean, there was the clip, he spoke at some school recently, and there was a trans woman who came and spoke and was kind of gave a very heartfelt take on her situation, and I think that Matt was definitely trying to come at it from a compassionate angle. I don't did you see that clip?
No, I didn't see that clip.
Yeah, and then he did a whole follow-up clip about how he felt bad that like the audience sort of like cheered him at the end when, because it really like wasn't meant to be like a gotcha moment, because it's not as if he's denying the gender dysphoria exists. And like, right. I don't understand why Blair is even like, I don't, maybe she's conservative, but how is her not buying into everything about gender ideology make her conservative? Like, you would think that you could have someone who's far left and would still have the same sort of like scientific beliefs about transgenderism. Like, it's not a political belief.
Right. Yeah. And she gets labeled anti-trans too. She's a trans person and she gets labeled anti-trans just for having, some of the nuanced conversations. And I think that's where, a lot of this, and that's, I think Joe pushed back on, the gay marriage idea. I support gay marriage. I think Joe's absolutely right. Like, we talk about not having government interfere, not banning things, not making things illegal. And, I think people have the right to do whatever they want. But to Matt Walsh's point, it gets insidious when you have, big pharma, or you have, the medical industry reliant on, transitioning certain people. And especially in the, when they talk about the kids, that's
they're
a little
very different issues. I mean, yeah. So let's like segment them for a second. Like,
yeah.
The gay man, I think that it's important for people to understand Walsh's perspective on it, and like not to necessarily agree with it, but like I think that from a consistency perspective, he is trying to be like philosophically consistent on it. And I think his point is, you know, he wants definitions on things. And so I think that's a fair thing to do. Like what he's, you know, in the same way he asked, what is woman? He's asking like, what is marriage? And I guess, you know, a lot of people have like different goals with marriage, and maybe marriage really is more of just a, you know, legal agreement. Like you, because you can think of it more of as just a contract between two people who want to live together and like save on taxes and, you know, do that kind of thing. Or you can think about it from more of a procreation perspective that he thinks about it. But you don't even need the state to, I feel, you know, have like a sacred marriage bond necessarily. So it's a tricky issue. I don't really know what the solution is like, because it's not as if there's not a line now. Like it's not like, I think they started talking about like, well, then why can't like 5 people get married?
Right. No, yeah, and I don't have an answer to that too. I mean, that's a really good question, you know, and obviously marriage goes way back into, you know, early humanity, and it has, you know, changed. It's had many forms. It's changed over time, and yeah, like in the current day, it's, you know, we view it as the way we view it now. Yeah, anytime the government's getting involved with like people's relationships, though, you know, it is a little strange. And yeah, why can't 5 people get
But
married?
they are involved.
Yeah,
like marriage is the definition of marriage is getting the government involved.
Yeah, today, right?
Yeah, right, because the government still can't make decisions for specific religions. So I don't understand, you know, what the problem is with people wanting to get married through the state. Because if you're a Catholic, for instance, you know, the Catholic Church still doesn't need to marry gay people. Those people would have like a justice of the peace that would marry them. So like, why do people from the Catholic Church care what other people are doing outside of their church? You know, that, or should anybody care outside of their own faith what somebody's doing in terms of a contract with the state?
Yeah, it's almost like a different, you know, because Walsh keeps calling it like the institution of marriage. And, you know, that it did come from the place that he is discussing. I mean, historically, that is what it was for. And that, you know, it emerged into, you know, our legal system from there. And now it's sort of, you know, I guess he's just arguing that it's being diluted. But, you know, Joe is arguing that there's already, you know, like the edge cases of, you know, not everybody wants to have kids.
Right.
And Walsh would say, okay, well, they should want to, but he's not saying that they shouldn't be able to get married.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, I would say to Joe's point, though, like Joe brought up a good point. Like it has changed over time. I mean, if you look at King Henry Tudor, he's the one that established divorce as being legal. Like before then, it was illegal to get divorced. And, you know, should people have the ability to get divorced after they get married? I mean, you know, there have been changes to it over time, and obviously we're in a new time. You know, we're in the computer age. You know, like, is what we came up with thousands of years ago still relevant today? Like, or should it be tweaked? And yeah, I mean, I don't see a difference. I mean,
they talk about divorce.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's one of Joe's points. It's like, you know, like it's you know, divorce, because most marriages in America end in divorce, and that was one of Joe's talking points. It's like marriage is great, but there, you know, there can also be an argument that some people may not necessarily, they maybe shouldn't have gotten married in the first place, you know. And
I mean, it does get abused. Like I know people who have used marriage for like immigration purely.
Yep.
And that, I mean, I think that is illegal actually, but it's not easy to detect that.
Right.
I look at marriage more along the lines of the free speech realm, sort of, if you want to get married, if you want to have gay marriage or marry whoever you want to, that's within the realm of free speech. I liked what Walsh and Rogan were talking about in terms of now we're entering into a realm with the trans culture with compelled speech. So, like, for instance, my uncle's a full transgender, full sex change, went from Uncle Tom to Aunt Tammy. And as far as I'm concerned, he has the full right as an adult to make those decisions, to have whatever surgeries he wants, and to call himself by whatever pronoun and name that he wants. But if I was to be forced into admitting publicly or in any sense that he is a woman, that would be compelled speech. And I think that's where it crosses the line. It crosses the line when it starts to become this new form of fascism where everybody has to adhere to the same ideology. It's one thing to allow an ideology to exist. That's free speech. But now those same people who are allowed free speech to say what they wanted to say want to stop the rest of us from being able to have our level of free speech. And so that's where it becomes a problem.
And it, when the state gets involved, for instance, like if someone wants to change their gender on their driver's license, or change their gender for applying to school, or change the gender for the census, when the malleability starts to enter into the legal system, and the sort of statistical infrastructure of society, I can see how that could cause complications, because suddenly the data is changing. Your demographic data is now changing sort of according to people's own personal subjective decision. So I think a third category totally, or having additional categories, I would be much more in support of than using the same existing categories, because then you're literally just like messing with the data of the population.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a really tough conversation. And then, you throw in sports, and then you throw in, jails, and you throw in all of these, spaces that are supposed to be safe for women. And then you get into the J.K. Rowling argument, and it's a really tough conversation. The thing that really drives me nuts, though, it's like anyone that has it is automatically deemed anti-trans just for asking questions like that. That's unfortunate. Like we have to have a conversation about it, and that's what I think Joe and Matt did very well, and it's a good start to it. And I'm hoping we see more of it.
The whole convo would be made a lot easier. Matt Walsh talked about this. If we just broke it down according to sex and biology and gender, because one could argue well enough that gender is on a spectrum, but sex is not. And so when you have issues like, trans men that want to enter into locker rooms and they have a penis and the other women there don't feel comfortable, or when it comes to prisons and you got a guy that says he's a woman, but when it comes to the biology, he's got a cock and he's knocking people up. So like, there's no argument there. There's no spectrum there. If he was a woman, then he wouldn't be able to impregnate somebody, So I think, gender is a spectrum, but sex is not. Mm-hmm. And so it's easy enough to break things down that way when it comes to laws and the way that we operate within society. And I feel like, just like Blair White would easily accept this, it's like you accept that there's going to be limitations on your actions within the gender of your choice. You made that decision to change genders. You have not changed your biological person, and you have to accept that. That's just science and reason. And I understand why Matt Walsh would be concerned about sort of a breakdown of truth within society, because when everything becomes relative, you start to lose your grasp on reality itself. And then you have a much more increase of drug addiction and suicide and all this stuff when people have no definition of reality anymore. So You know, there's sex and then there's gender.
Yeah, and Joe brought up, I think rightfully so, he brought up the nature thing where it's like in nature weird things happen. Like there are animals that are homosexual, there are insects that are homosexual. Nature's just a weird place and we're not immune to that. So, you know, obviously there, in my opinion and based on people I've known and met in my life, I truly think, you know, that it's naturally a thing that occurs. It's just how do we handle it, you know? And I'm also skeptical of the people that are making money off of it. Those are the people that, you know, are problematic.
Yeah, and I think the line keeps getting pushed. The goalposts keep moving, and I think that that's what As a Woman really shows is, you know, and Matt even brought this up, like first they were saying that, oh yeah, no, you have gender and you have sex and they're different. Like that was the initial argument. And then they moved the goalposts and started saying that no, sex is a spectrum as well. And so, and I don't think that this is like a total groupthink. It's probably more an extreme subset of the space. But a lot of people who may not necessarily agree with that aren't, you know, don't have the courage to back down to the ones who are really trying to push it that far.
Yeah.
And and what happens is because they're so compassionate and they're like so concerned about people's feelings, they're not, you know, they consider it violence to even discuss it, to even utter the words that sex is not a spectrum is like violence against the trans community and puts people at risk, as they would say. So, you know, there's this very strange chilling effect that has happened, I think, within the community, and a lot of them, I think, are afraid to speak out from the backlash, but also because they may actually think that they are causing violence against those people by saying that. So it becomes this really strange situation.
Well, yeah, and another thing I loved about this conversation is like, you know, I think the internet has blurred the lines between political affiliation. So like you could see like Joe Rogan's labeled a conservative, alt-right, all this stuff. But like in this conversation, you can kind of see where the traditional liberal, the 90s liberal, you can see that line. Mm-hmm. And that's a really, really good because we're all getting blanketed as conservative hate people, you know, people that hate whatever by the activists, but there really is nuance here in this discussion. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it too. I like seeing the 90s represented, you know?
Yeah, it was perfect pushback, totally respectful, just like disagreement. And Walsh has, much more traditionalist view on it, and that's totally fine. Oh, look, we got Lydia in the comments saying Rogan Walsh 2024.
Yeah, I saw that.
So maybe, I mean, we've gone pretty long, so maybe let's just watch a little bit of the clip and then we can talk about it. And we'll just talk about this today.
Cool.
Get special treatment without any special act. They haven't done anything that warrants that unique behavior.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think that's actually so much of this that and people don't notice it, but a lot of this is just standard narcissism.
Yes,
especially you listen to these. You know, why is this so common among celebrities now? All the celebrities have trans kids and they're coming out as non-binary and whatever else. And then you listen to like Demi Lovato or whoever, and you listen to them explain why they're always. Well, I don't identify with these labels. I'm beyond that. I'm above that. It's like these labels were good enough for billions of humans before you, but it's not good enough for you. You can't find yourself there. But all these other billions of human beings, it was fine. They had no problem. But you're so special that we need to change the rules of the English language for you specifically. It's incredibly egotistical.
It's bizarre. It's like if you feel that you're different than everyone else, you're still a female. You're just a different human being who happens to be a female. If you're so unique, go prove it with your actions. Prove it with your work. Prove it out there in the world. But to demand this very special attention. And that's what we give people. Like, if you give people that thing today, there's groups of people that will tell you, you're amazing, you're incredible, you're beautiful, you're brave. It gives them positive affirmation for making these decisions.
It's also part of what you're describing is personality, right? I mean, so if you're saying, oh, I'm a female, but I don't identify with girly things and I don't like the color pink and whatever. Okay, that's.
I think I don't know what the ding measurement is on fair use on Rogan clips. So I want to be careful, but yeah, I mean, it's just funny because I do give credit. People who are willing to, so eccentrically express themselves with this type of, physical appearance, it honestly does take like a certain level of bravery to do that. In some way, which I can give credit for, coming out of I mean, even just like coming out of the closet for homosexuals, like, and lesbians, like, it's not easy to do that and to reveal that about yourself. But it's a completely different situation when, as you were saying before, Mentone, like demanding that compliance from people around you, as opposed to just letting your freak flags fly and just, letting that be the end of it.
Right. Demanding that society adhere to your identity. Everybody has to participate in your identity in order to make it real. This was something that they talked about a little bit, which was, isn't it interesting how the trans dynamic almost forces the gender binary more? Because, say you don't believe in the gender binary, but then you go ahead and get a sex change and call yourself the other gender. Well, what's the significance of that sex change? What's the significance of changing your pronoun and changing your gender if there is no gender?
Yeah. And I think that this is why there's sort of like infinite variations within the space. It's like there's so many different pronouns, and people have kind of created these very like complex not hierarchical, but more like it's almost like a map of different like species. I don't even know. There's just so many different names for like types of sub ideology within it. So like some people do believe there is a binary. Some trans people do sort of apply the binary. Others don't. And so some are kind of using it, others aren't. And but
well,
I think we're gonna get through it, to be honest. Like because as people have more conversations, what I would love to see is a prominent trans person kind of create a film answering this question.
Or discussion. I mean, like that was like, unfortunately, in the doc, like that was his biggest challenge, is to get into this deeper. Like there's these surface level talking points, these things that you're supposed to say, but then when you get deeper, people's their statements start breaking down. And I'm with Matt on this. Like the thing that I don't like about it is the popularizing of it. Like in schools now, it's cool to be non-binary. It's cool to be, non-traditional. And a lot of these kids don't even know what that necessarily means, but they know, if you can get social credit points. He brought up Demi Lovato, another good example. Like, is this someone that truly identifies as non-binary, or is she trying to save her career? Like, there's huge red flags when it comes to like being this in your face about it. So it's
I mean, you don't really see tomboys anymore.
Yeah.
People don't use that phrase. It used to be totally normal, and that's kind of as far as it would get taken. And I guess like I would just love to I want to have more of these types of conversations on minds. Like any transgender people listening, like come talk about it. Like would love to engage more deeply. And I don't know. We had some other stories we wanted to go over, like Elon told everybody to vote Republican today. We got elections today.
Yeah.
We got Marco Rubio.
Did you guys vote? Did you guys get out and vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to do a mail-in situation.
Gotcha.
Yep. So we'll see. We'll see how long
Yeah.
the results take to come in. And
Yeah.
what else did we have?
We had the UFO story.
Yeah, bring that up quick, just so that we can justify putting it in the title.
Yeah, there we go.
Marco's modus operandi, inside Marco Rubio's quest to expose the truth about UFOs after Senator battled for Congress to get an answer. So scroll down a little bit. Yeah, there's like a whole new department that is focused on UAP. Keep going. Recently we had Ryan Graves on Rogan's podcast, who's an Air Force pilot who, has witnessed multiple UAP issues. The Pentagon's releasing reports about it. Apparently on the Ryan Graves episode of Rogan, Rogan said that Christopher Mellon, who's former Defense Intelligence Agency, who was on his show talking about it because he had been kind of looking at it deeply when he was at Defense Intelligence, said that there are high res unreleased.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Because I remember watching that show, which I highly recommend everyone watch. Chris Mellon is just a beast and is so knowledgeable about this stuff and is just like such a expert. I'm not saying I trust everything he says, but he's very credible, just like Commander Schaefer and Ryan Graves. But in the Chris Mellon episode, they were like, oh well, I can talk to you about that off air. And he was sort of alluding to some other stuff that might be coming out. But and then he sort of said that in the Ryan Graves episode that there is high res stuff that is unreleased. And so
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be. I mean, these literally dozens of pilots were seeing this cube within a sphere is what they describe it as, which is so creepy and like, like
but even even the Tic Tac videos and like what those things that were flying around them were achieving was crazy. There's actually, so JJ Abrams and Bad Robot did a documentary. I highly recommend it. I believe it's on Amazon. It's called UFO. And JJ Abrams, obviously huge movie producer, and Bad Robot. They did a really good job of breaking down just the unexplained footage. The footage that we have where it can't be easily dismissed or what wasn't proved to be a hoax, like the really strange ones. And the one that stuck out to me was the O'Hare sighting, where they had that UFO and they have pictures of it, and it was just hovering there for 30 minutes. And it wasn't, what really convinced me was the air traffic. So they released the air traffic control audio tapes. And yeah, it starts off as like these guys are just joking around, like, ha ha ha. People are saying they're seeing this UFO, and they stated where it was located at the airport. And then all of a sudden the dialogue starts changing, and people are like, no, yeah, we can see it. We're looking at it right now. And there's film of it. And this is an airport, like things can't just fly over an airport. So that one was, yeah, it's like hard to explain. Like, what else could it be? Is it the government trolling us?
Well, they'd be trolling themselves, which was what Ryan Graves said, because that was their issue. Like, they didn't know if it was some sort of black ops project that, because they will do that to themselves sometimes. And there'll be like simultaneous classified projects overlapping with, normal military stuff. So it'll like confuse the military themselves about what's going on. My battery is about to die, so I don't want to drop. But
Well,
yeah,
let's continue this on the next show. Yeah, I want to get your opinions on this.
yeah, we'll get into it deeper. Everyone, follow me, minds.com/Ottman. Follow Mentone. Follow Sean Frasick. Let's keep
Don't take
ripping.
time.
UFOs and gender ideology.
And get out and vote.